G'day folks, welcome to part 3 of our road trip to Darwin. What do you reckon? Nice place for a swim? Yeah, probably not. Might be a couple of crocodiles around here perhaps. We're up at Cossack, which is in the Pilbara area of Western Australia. This episode will be starting from our overnight camp there just outside of Karatha. We'll go up and have a look into Dampier and Karratha for a little bit, and here at Cossack, and then we'll end up in Port Hedland and we'll do a BHP tour of the loading facilities up there, so that'll be pretty interesting. So sit back, make yourself comfortable. Let's go! Okay folks, day 7. We just left our overnight camp. Nice little spot that one. It was right next to the highway, which you would have thought would have been a bit of a problem. But the fact was, once it gets dark, there's not really that much traffic on the highway. The odd truck during the night, but not really much of a problem whatsoever. So we're only about 60 kilometres out of Karatha. So that's where we're heading for today. We're going to go into Karatha and have a look around there, and Dampier, have a look around that spot, look at the Red Dog Memorial. You probably all know Red Dog because of the movie, so we'll go and check that out. He was a local around here, a bit of a hero I think, so we'll have a look there. Then we're going to head off to Cossack, which is a ghost town. We're going to have a look around there before we end up tonight eventually in Port Hedland. So that's our plans for today. As you enter Karatha, the information centre is on your left. Behind the car park is a path that goes up to a lookout at the top of the hill, where you can get a pretty good view of the layout of the land. Dampier is to your left, a short drive away. There's a fairly big shopping centre right smack in the middle of town. Karratha is a modern city with somewhere around 22,000 people living here. Okay, that includes neighbouring towns like Wickham and Roebourne, some islands off the coast, and I think anyone that they could find camping for longer than 2 days. Karratha is the largest city in the northwest. While it's not the first town here, that was Dampier, Karatha has taken over as being the regional city for the Pilbara region. Iron ore is what put this place on the map. In the 1960s, Dampier was the port for Hamersley Iron operations. With employees coming in from Hamersley Iron, Robe River, Dampier Salt Company and workers from the Northwest Shelf, the need for more accommodation in the area led to the construction of Karratha. Just like every town in the northwest of West Australia or the top end of Australia, they're all seriously prone to cyclones during the summer months. Karratha has been damaged several times by cyclones, so everything these days has to be built to cyclone standard. One example is the hospital, for instance. The sides of the hospital have all got dirt all manned up right up to the roof height. So the idea is the wind just funnels along the ground and then pushes up over the dirt straight over the roof of the hospital, and that way the hospital can't lose its roof. Houses themselves, they're all chained or with steel been attached down into the concrete foundations of the house to help hold the whole lot down into the ground so it don't get blown away during cyclones. Driving to Dampier, you pass by the second biggest salt works. You can see a couple of the drying ponds as you cross the causeway. If you have a look in the ponds near the road, you may see a few signs of what the locals can get up to. As you enter Dampier, you cross one of the railway lines where you can usually look down and see one of the iron ore trains coming in to dump its load. The first thing you'll come across when you come into town is a memorial to a special dog, Red Dog. I'm sure you've all seen the movie, and if you haven't, I can suggest it's worth watching.
All those in favour of Red Dog joining the TWU under the job heading consular, whatever. All those in favour, say aye. Aye.
That's right, a dog that's a fully paid up member of the local union. Red Dog was a dog that hitchhiked his way around the Pilbara and even as far south as Perth. Everyone up here knew him. As they say in the movie, a dog for everyone, but no one in particular. Take a drive around Dampier and you'll see plenty from the early days, like these old single man's quarters. It does look like they're trying to sell them off now. You can have them from $550,000. That's the whole building. So behind me you can see the white mounds of processed salt waiting to be exported. So a little bit about Dampier. Originally the place was called after William Dampier, the part-time pirate. It wasn't until about the early 1960s when Hammersley Iron started their iron ore operations and were looking to build a port to export the iron ore from here. The town was basically built because of that. It was the original town in the area. Karatha came afterwards because if you look at the nature of the land around here, it's extremely rocky, and it was very quickly ran out of room to build more housing. So Karatha was developed to provide housing for the workers in the iron ore mines. And now Karratha is the regional centre for the Pilbara. It's the biggest town in the area. The town had everything you needed to keep a mob of blokes happy when they're not working, from a bowling club to a yacht club and marina, because there's good fishing in these waters. Everything was put in to keep them happy and, more importantly, keep them working. Western Australia is the world's largest supplier of iron ore, and the Port of Dampier is the world's second largest bulk export port, exporting iron ore, salt, liquefied gas, to name just a few. The Pilbara Peninsula is part of the Dampier archipelago. The North West Shelf project is a joint venture between 6 major international companies. Together, that accounts for more than 1/3 of Australia's oil and gas production. The gas plant has a lookout and information centre where you can get an overview of the size of the operation that produces natural gas. The information centre is only open Monday to Friday. The gas fields are around 125 kilometres off the coast and is piped into this plant for processing. From here, the gas is exported around the Asia Pacific region and south to Perth, and the southwest and the Goldfields regions. There is a link in the description of an interesting video of the North West Shelf project. So we've just left Karatha. We're continuing north, heading towards Roebourne. We're just going to take a little side road off of that to a place, it's a ghost town these days, it's called Cossack. Cossack was a very important place in the early days. The name Cossack, well actually it was called Tin San or something very close to that. It was the name of the little ship that brought in supplies to some of the early settlements that were around this area, some of the early stations that had been set up. Now the story that I actually heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, but the town of Cossack actually came about originally because of the pearl shells. Cossack was actually the first pearling town in this northwest area. But apparently originally the English, they saw the Aborigines walking around with pearl shell around them as decoration. And they said to them, oh, you know, where'd you get that stuff from? And they said, oh, we just pick it up off the beach down there. And so they went down and had a look, and it was just heaps and heaps of that mother of pearl shell all over the place. And now back in the early days, they used to make pearl buttons out of the mother of pearl shell. and that went right through until they started making plastic buttons, and all of a sudden the pearling industry wasn't of any good to them. It wasn't until after that they discovered that there was actually value in the actual pearl itself. Before that, they pretty much just sort of threw them away. But it wasn't long before lots of ships were operating out of the area. They were doing lots of pearling in there, and then when it ran out of its pearling, the fleet moved north to a new place called Broome, and it's been there ever since. The ghost town itself, I think the last people moved out of there around about the 1950s. It then sort of got to a pretty bad state of repair when around about the 1970s, 80s, they started doing it back up again to turn it into a tourist attraction. Some of the buildings they've left as they were, so a little bit derelict, and some of them they've done up. So we'll go in there and we'll have a look around. Cossack was a centre for pearling from 1866. By the 1870s, over 80 boats were operating out of the port, with divers from Japan, the Philippines, Malaysia and China were working in the area. In 1871, after Governor Wells visited the area, the town name changed to Cossack after the ship that the governor arrived on. The town site was officially declared in 1872. By the 1900s, the pearling fleet had moved north to Broome to take advantage of the pearling beds in the area. By 1910, the harbour had silted over and Cossack became virtually a ghost town. In 1910, the municipality was dissolved. Point Sampson became the main port for the Roebourne area. People continued to live in Cossack until after World War II. By 1950, it had become a ghost town. In 1976, a committee was formed to restore the town as a kind of museum. Well, as you can see, it's not exactly a ghost town today. From time to time they have events out here, and today looks like one of them. Some of the town has been restored, and you can go inside and get a good idea of what life was like in the early days. Through the magic of television, let's have a look when it's not quite so busy. One building has been turned into budget accommodation, and if the tenants get a little out of hand, the old cells out the back still work. And some buildings have been left as they are, perhaps just to remind us what we almost lost. Well, that didn't quite go to plan. We got into Cossack and they've got an event on, so weren't able to go in and have a look around the place properly because it was full of people. I'll have to rely on some of my photos from previous trips. The lookout, which is on the other side, really worth going into to have a look at. Anyway, we're off to Port Hedland now. It's around about 2.5 hours to get there. As you're driving along out here, the country goes from hills to flat grasslands within a fairly short distance, then back to hills again. But you can see why, when the first explorers came out here, why they thought the area would make great grazing lands. Unless they came out in the middle of a cyclone, they didn't know what extremes of weather was out here. Very few of the first settlers lasted very long, and those that did would have had to been very hard and determined people. And yes, there were some success stories from the region. We're just coming up to the intersection of where Great Northern Highway meets up with the highway that we've been on. We've been coming up the Northwest Coastal Highway, and this is now where that highway joins together. And for the rest of the time, we'll be travelling on the Great Northern Highway through to the top of Western Australia. As you come into Port Hedland, you have South Hedland out on the right hand side here. You come over a couple of huge bridges. You've got the old the trains, the massive trains out to the left hand side. I can see a massive train out here in front of us rolling along. They usually have maybe 2 engines at the front, 2 engines around about the middle, and they're about sort of a kilometre and a half, 2 kilometres long. And you come through this massive interchange they've got. We're going to head north in a couple of days. We're here in Port Hedland for a couple of days yet. Then we'll head out through there on the interchange heading north. We've taken the left-hand spur which gets us into Port Hedland. We're still a little way out of Port Hedland yet. You might be able to see perhaps the train out in front of us. Just the back end of it. And as we come around, we'll see the big, huge salt hills from the Dampier salt mines. As I said, this is the third largest salt operation in Western Australia here in Port Hedland. Dampier was the biggest, and then the one near Carratha is the second. Actually, I can see a massive D9 on top of the sand pile, the salt pile. It doesn't look very big up there, that's for sure. We'll come back probably tomorrow and have another look at the salt operation here. As you come down the other side of the bridge, you can see some of the drying ponds on the right, and on the left some of the trains loaded with ore waiting to be unloaded, and other trains empty, ready to go back to the mines. And as we head to our caravan park for the next couple of nights, we pass the racecourse and the overflow caravan park site. Uh-oh, what's this? Must have been race day today. Copper must have had hot chips or something he wanted me to blow into the bag. And here we are. We're staying at the Discovery Caravan Park. They were great. We let them know we were going to be a bit late, and they put our pass for the gate in a lockbox and said, just come in tomorrow and do the paperwork. Can't complain about that. So we've got the day in Port Hedland, and we're about to go out. We're going to go and have a look at the salt works that are we went past yesterday on the way in, and then later on this afternoon we're going to go out to the BHP loading facilities. We've got a bus tour out there and we're going to go and have a look around there. That'll be pretty interesting. So that's pretty much our plan for today, so let's go. Iron ore isn't the only big export out of Port Hedland. Dampier salt also operates out of here. While it's a pretty impressive amount of salt here, it's not the biggest mine. Dampier salt has 3 sites. The largest in Dampier, which produces around 4.2 million tonnes. Lake McLeod back towards Carnarvon at 2.9 million tonnes. And this one here at 3.2 million tonnes. That's a lot of chips. Actually, most of this salt is used in the chemical industry. A small percentage of the salt is used in food processing, and some is used in the Northern Hemisphere for road de-icing. Here comes a train now from the mine. It's only a small one because it's only got 2 front engines. The big ones will have 2 more engines in the middle or at the back. Different companies do them a different way depending on what they like to do. The whole railway system is amazing. They have these sensors along the whole length of the track. If they detect a dodgy wheel or a bearing, then the controller will tell the driver which wagon's at fault and where to cut them loose. Then they'll send a repair crew out to fix it. After that, they'll get another train to pick them up on their way to the port. So I guess that's half a train. If we get another one of them, and 3 of the big ones, then that'll be another shipload ready to go. Speaking of going, we'd better head off for our BHP tour. The town of Port Hedland really isn't all that big. This is the main street of shops. Most people live over in South Hedland where the bigger shopping centre area is. But our tour starts from the Tourist Information Centre on the main street. The bus trip starts with a quick zip around the ocean, where they talk a little bit about the ships coming into the port, but I'll come back to that shortly.
You'll notice there's a ship coming in now that will be accompanied by 4 tugs. All of the bulk carriers will be having 4 tugs. And that's just as a safeguard because we do only have a one-way channel. You can't have 2 ships in the channel going opposite directions. So they're wholly and solely there to make sure that they don't land in the shallow water.
Now the tour takes about an hour, so here are some of the highlights from it. This is the old control room where they used to control the operations on the site. That's all done now down in Perth using computers and the internet.
Walk down the street.
Here is some of the carriages that are waiting to be unloaded. They don't disconnect a train, they just rotate 2 carriages at a time and dump the ore out the top, which is now the bottom.
Smoking gun, yeah. I ain't got no plans, just a rusty voice and an empty gas can. My car's broken down a mile behind, and I've got my life set on rewind, baby. I ain't got no plans, just a rusty voice and an empty gas can. My car's broken down a mile behind, and I've got my life set on rewind, baby.
Sometimes the trains have a mix of different sized rocks in them, so they dump the load into a huge sifter and then send the ore to the different stockpiles. Then when the ship comes in, the bucket wheel reclaimer then scoops up the ore and sends it on the conveyors to the ship. This tour is really interesting and really worth doing. It is popular and there are limited seats. So if you're interested, then I suggest you book about a week ahead.
Walk down the street.
At the end of the main street in town is a lookout that overlooks the port, where you can get a different perspective of the port operations.
Like the smoking gun, yeah.
Today, Port Hedland's the world's largest bulk export port in terms of tonnage. In 2016-17 year, they exported over 500 million tonnes. That's just about 6,000 ship movements in the year.
Rewind, baby. I ain't got no
To get those ships loaded, one comes down the narrow channel, goes down the end, turns around. While he's turning around, another one comes out of the dock and heads out so that the one turning around can then move into his spot. But ships aren't just exporting stuff out of here. There are also ships bringing product in like this one. Well, that's pretty much it for Port Hedland, so join us next time when we'll have a look around the caravan park here first before we leave, and then we'll eventually get into Broome. If you like the video, down the bottom down here there is a button. You can push that down there for the like button, and consider subscribing. There's also a subscribe button down there. You can hit that, and there's a little bell next to it. If you push that one, then that will send you an email when I upload a video. That way you won't miss anything else out. So anyway, till next time, happy travels.